Okay, so welcome to AP English. This is your AP English course. I set up this course back when things were a little uncertain, and I've organized it by week and by day, so you know exactly what's expected for each week and each day. And obviously, if you are listening to this video, you were able to click on this link here, and you are listening to the YouTube video explanation for day one of class. Week one obviously was just conferences and orientations and things, so nothing to do there. But now that we're getting into actual class, my focus for today is going to be going over a lot of different information about the class, how things are going to be graded, what our goals are, what kind of content we'll be covering. I'll get a little bit of information from you, and then I'll have you do sort of a little test submission. And that's mostly it. That's mostly my focus for this first day of class. So in this video, I am going to go over everything that I would go over in class and explain things. Obviously, I can't take questions in quite the same way, but usually first day of class, people are pretty quiet anyway. So if you come up with any questions, of course, feel free to email me. So first thing I'll talk about is the syllabus. Okay. So, AP English syllabus. I have my email address on here. This is definitely the most reliable way to get in contact with me. It goes right to my phone. I try and respond to emails as soon as I see them. Otherwise, they stress me out if they accumulate too much. So, AP English Language and Composition focuses on effective reading and writing practices with a little bit more of an emphasis on writing, specifically kind of persuasive writing, argumentation. So hopefully that's something that you enjoy, because there will be a lot of it. The AP exam is kind of our year-long goal. The AP exam is comprised of 45 multiple choice questions and 3 free response questions. It is weighted more heavily on the writing side. The 3 free response questions count more than the 45 multiple choice questions. So we will do a lot of writing, and I'll talk a little bit more about the AP exam later on in this presentation. Goal of class is kind of twofold. I mean, obviously, I am trying to prepare you for the AP exam. I would love it, if everyone could pass the AP exam and get college credit and, have one less class to take whenever you attend college. But at the very least, I want to prepare you for a college-level English course. It is likely that you will take at least one English class in college. It's usually a general education requirement. Usually you have to take like English 101 and English 102 or something. And even if you do get AP credit for one of those English classes, hopefully after this class you will still feel more prepared going into the other English classes that you may encounter. And worst case scenario, if you don't end up passing the AP exam, hopefully you at least feel like you've achieved some growth and your skill levels have advanced to the point where you could handle a college-level English course in the future. As far as stuff for class, you will absolutely need a Chromebook or some sort of laptop. I'm sure that you assumed that given the layout of this semester and our A-day, B-day, remote day kind of layout. But yeah, definitely crucial. Normally, I require everyone to have some pencils and a composition notebook. I don't think I'm going to do that this year. I haven't 100% made up my mind. I will have to make it up in a couple of weeks once we start what I usually use the composition notebook for. But I think I'm probably going to switch that to something digital, just so we don't have a lot of composition notebooks being passed around and handled and, potential germ transfer and stuff. So that may actually be a moot point. You may be able to scratch that off the list. I have some, optional recommendations for things. Headphones, I think, are a useful thing to have in class. If you're done with stuff and you want to kind of get ahead on things and you want to watch some of these videos that I've made, then, that would allow you to do that. So it would allow you to do something academic. But also, if we have working time in class, a lot of people enjoy listening to music. Headphones are a good way to do that and respect the concentration of your neighbor. Normally, I would happily provide Sharpies and colored pencils and creative sort of things like that for you. given the climate that we are going back to school in, if you would rather have your own and not touch mine, then you are welcome to. But we will do a few creative things, a little bit of happy Zen stuff in the midst of the really intense reading and writing that we will have going on throughout the course. So that's up to you. Okay. I am going to try to give you a variety of things. I'll give you some grammar stuff. We'll do some reading. We'll do some writing. This 3 days to make up work obviously is kind of out the window in the crisis that we're in. If you develop the coronavirus, I'm not going to tell you, all right, you got 3 days, So we're going to be very flexible and responsive to people's needs and things. But I do expect a certain level of diligence. So, if you are in a bad way, just make sure to communicate with me so I don't think that you're slacking off or anything. Let's see. I'll talk more about this Google spreadsheet in a moment, but I will try to give you, pretty instantaneous grade feedback. I don't update PowerSchool as often. I'll usually put quizzes in there pretty immediately, but some of the other stuff, it doesn't make sense to update it, every day, sometimes not even every week. But of course, I will make sure it's updated for progress report time. And, if you ever want a personal update in between, just let me know and I can, handle things for you. All right. So the second half of this document is about expected texts and films in class. When I read the AP English Language and Composition course description, this paragraph kind of stuck out to me, and I just want to emphasize it going into this class because I do intend for this class, in addition to making you think in a literary English writing kind of way, to also get you to think in terms of world issues. And if you go through this entire class and you're not, at least a little bit uncomfortable at some point, then maybe I'm not doing my job well enough, because I do want to give you a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different viewpoints and have a lot of engaging conversation about real issues. That being said, in order to do that, you have to be able to handle controversial material. So AP students have chosen a program that directly involves them in college level work that demands a certain level of maturity. So if we're talking about, a serious, sensitive, controversial issue, then, I can't have AP students who are going to denigrate others or, say hateful things or make inappropriate jokes about that. We want to be able to have good conversation without it devolving to an immature level. So, AP students should have maturity, skill, and will to seek larger meaning, whether you agree with the text or not. And I'm sure there will be something this semester that you're like, to know about that. But anyways, I wanted to give you a list of novels and films ahead of time. And parents, if you are listening to this, definitely feel free to contact me if you have an issue or if you have questions about any of these. I would be happy to tell you more about them so you can decide if that's appropriate for your student. Typically, I don't have too much objections to most of these texts. There's a couple that I am showing for the first time, but I did screen them thoroughly, and I don't think there's anything that's seriously over the line for a high school student, even one that's in a college course. So these are the major novels that we'll cover this year. Fahrenheit 451 and In Cold Blood will take care of this semester, and then Just Mercy we will read next semester. The Crucible will be the beginning of next semester. It's about witches, so there is a little bit of violence and a little bit of sexual content. Capote is the only movie that is rated R. There is a murder that takes place in the movie. They don't show it. Well, they don't show it explicitly. There's some sounds and things. You know what's happening. But there's a little bit of violence in there, obviously, because of that. And there's a few, inappropriate words. Probably nothing you haven't heard at school, but if you're concerned about that, let me know. Just Mercy is PG-13. It does have some pretty controversial racial issues going on in it, but not as much in the way of violence or sexual content. And then 13th, that's a documentary. I couldn't find a rating on it. It does have some violence in it. And it does have some language in it as well. So, anyways, um, I am going to pass out a physical document. So for A-Day students, I'll pass it out today. And then for B-Day students, I will pass that out when I see you. And if I could get that document signed by parents and students, and parents, if I could get an email address from you, sometimes they have them in PowerSchool, sometimes they don't. It's just good for me to have a reliable one for you. But anyways, that will indicate to me that you understand all the information in the syllabus. You're okay with the texts and movies that we'll be covering this semester. Want to make sure communication is clear at the start of the year. So that is your syllabus. Next up, I used to have this page in Canvas back when we first really got into the Chromebooks. I would expect by now that you guys are very familiar with Google Drive and Canvas. If for some reason you forgot how to construct your password or something, then there it is. But we'll be using both of those heavily, of course. Okay, grading. So I use a grading system. Got it from the department head, Mr. Huggins, who taught AP language for many years. And he got it from a doctor, Dr. Robert Marzano, educational expert. And he was a strong proponent of skills-based grading. So the first few things that I have on here are, the little minor things that'll occur throughout the semester, vocabulary quizzes, a little grade just for like turning in stuff on time, participating in class discussions. We'll have a few that'll be online depending on what day they fall on. Let's see. We'll have some progress checks that have AP style questions on them, some little reading quizzes to make sure that you're reading the books. But anyway, so that's a small portion of your grade, these little quizzy type things, little things. Most of your grade, 80% of your grade in this class, is determined by skills. So some of these skills, you know what they are. You are very familiar with grammar, punctuation, spelling. Others may be less familiar with. Reading diction is an important skill in AP language. The ability to analyze a writer's word choice when reading, understand the intended effect of word choice, interpreting things like that. Author's purpose, that kind of main idea, theme finding skill. So point being that I have all these skills here, right? And throughout the semester, whenever you receive an assignment, instead of receiving a single grade for a particular assignment, you will receive a grade for one or more of these skills. So depending on the assignment, it could assess many skills. So if you have a writing assignment, for example, then it would cover at least these first 5, because I'd be looking for your writing performance in terms of mechanics, as well as your word choice, as well as good sentence structure. So you would get 5 or 6 grades for a writing assignment, and maybe you would get 2 or 3 for an analysis assignment. And so think of it like a built-in rubric. But the cool thing about skills-based grading, and the thing that I think will work very well for the growth mentality that we need for AP language, is that Dr. Robert Marzano's philosophy was that students who are truly growing should not be punished for early mistakes or misunderstandings. And so rather than taking an average of all of the scores for a particular skill, rather than using the mean, to use the math term, he used the mode, the most frequent score. So let's say you have a writing assignment and you receive a score for your word choice. And then we have another writing assignment. You receive another score for your word choice. And then we have a third one, and so on and so forth. When I look at all of your skills for all of your writing assignments, and I look at your vocabulary and how your vocabulary usage may have progressed and grown, I will take your most consistent score, and that's the one that goes in PowerSchool. That's where you are. And that score will change throughout the semester. Obviously, we hope it will improve throughout the semester, throughout the year. But, sometimes things happen. Things get hard, and sometimes people are not able to match the level of difficulty. But hopefully, we will see progression and growth in all of these scores throughout the semester. So that's the general philosophy, and usually it benefits students. It can make it tricky to get an A because you really have to strive for perfection every time in some of these skills. But it pretty much at least guarantees a B or a C, because you're at least going to have probably a few times where you're able to demonstrate some skill and some competence in these particular areas. So, anyways, allows for challenges but rewards growth. Now, in order to facilitate this grading system, rather than having a grading scale that is from 0 to 100, I use a grading scale that is from 0 to 4, kind of the same way that your GPA is calculated. So it's a little bit more holistic, which makes it easier for me when I'm trying to decide on a score for a particular skill. I don't have to decide between, nitpicky little bitty points. I get a kind of general feel for whether there is evidence and mastery of that thing, whether it's abundant, whether it's frequent, whether it's occasional, whether it's scarce. It helps me a little bit better in terms of grading, and hopefully it helps you a little bit more in terms of feedback and in terms of establishing consistency. Obviously, you want to try to be making, 4s and 3.5s, and, you want those to be your goal. That doesn't mean you have to start there, though. Even if at the beginning of the year you're starting down in the 2s and the 1s, you absolutely can grow and can develop and can learn enough to where by the end of the semester you're getting 3.5s and 4s, and maybe those 2s and 1s don't even matter anymore. They're not factored into your grade at all because you've established a new level of consistency at a higher level. So this conversion chart is just to show you how things would get entered into PowerSchool, because PowerSchool does not recognize my holistic grading system. But you'll notice that even a 0.5, even if you really, really are just awful at something, that's still at least passing, So making zeros in my class is extremely difficult. You really have to screw something up to get a 0 or even an F. So, anyways, this is just sort of an explanation of that particular grading system. Now, I mentioned that it's very hard to get a 0. The one way that you can pull that off is through the act of plagiarism. And I used to just say something about this verbally, but I've made a little Canvas page for it, given that a lot of our work is going to be online. And the temptation when you are lost or confused to try to search for easy answers is going to be there. And I think sometimes it's there even more for very intelligent students who are used to succeeding, even more than for standard level students sometimes, because you guys are competitive, you want to do well, you feel this pressure to grow and to make good scores on things. And so sometimes, a little Google search later, you're like, oh no, I took something that was not mine. So plagiarism is a bad thing. Very bad. In plagiarism, you are representing someone else's work as your own. So in school, in this lovely high school we have, there are 3 reasons why you might find yourself accused of plagiarism. So the one you probably think of most often is when you are taking information from the internet without proper credit or authorization. So if you're copying and pasting something from a website, or even if you are taking the answers or ideas of someone when maybe you're supposed to be coming up with those answers and ideas from your own brain or from a text rather than from SparkNotes or whatever internet site you might be trying to use to kind of avoid the mental work of thinking about it. The other 2 ways involve other students. So if another student does an assignment and then they share their document with you or share their answers with you, and you just straight up take their work, put it as your own, turn it in, that is definitely still plagiarism. And usually it doesn't work out very well, because as I'm grading, I'll suddenly read an answer and be like, wow, this is exactly the same as someone else's answer. And then it's very easy for me to track down who else had the exact same type of answer, sometimes even the same spelling mistakes. So anyways, technology does actually make it a little easier for me to detect plagiarism, so please do not be tempted. Likewise, please do not facilitate someone else's plagiarism. That still involves you in the plagiarism. If you give another student access to your answers, your document, so they can copy your work, then that still is grounds for a write-up. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think they're just helping out a friend, but really, they're allowing that friend to avoid the mental effort of doing their own work, and that is an honor code violation. So, if for some reason, I really hope we don't have any instances, but if for some reason there is an instance of plagiarism that involves in-school suspension, you get a 0 for the assignment. If there is an instance of number 2 and number 3, then both people get a 0 for the assignment. Having that on your discipline record can affect other things long term. I served on a scholarship committee once, and someone's resume came up for a scholarship who had committed plagiarism in my class, and they did not get it. It can also affect JRTC promotions if you're involved in that program. If you want to get into a merit society, like National Honor Society, Beta Club, sometimes it can affect that. So it has a lot of effects, potentially, and I really, really don't want to have an instance. So I'm going to talk about it a lot today, so I hopefully never have to talk about it again. Okay, now that we're done with that, the next thing that I want to discuss is student information. I used to have physical copies of this, but then when the coronavirus hit, my physical copies got stuck at school and I didn't have access to that information anymore, so now we're going to do it digitally. So, basic information for the most part, reliable contact information, information about that contact information. Sometimes PowerSchool does not tell me the things that I need to know when I'm trying to get a hold of someone. This is a biggie. If you do not have reliable internet access, this class is going to be very, very difficult. I assume most of your classes are going to be very, very difficult. And if that's going to be an issue, I need to know that early on so we can figure out things and I can make allowances and we can get creative with trying to take care of that in this time of corona crisis. Just a couple of background questions, just so I kind of know the context that everyone has. I mean, if a bunch of people have already taken AP US History, or if I'm getting the AP History kids from last year, then, there's some background information. Maybe I don't have to go over as much. I know that students who I've had before have read and seen To Kill a Mockingbird, but one of the books that we'll be dealing with this semester does make a lot of references to it. So if I have a lot of people who are not familiar with that, then I may have to incorporate something in class to kind of give that background information. And then this just tells me a little bit about you. Normally on the first day, I'd try and work in an icebreaker, but I'm feeling a bit pressed for time this semester, what with losing our first week and all of our remote learning days. So anyways, that just allows me to learn a little bit more about you, and then you can submit. Okay, next up. Okay, I have a particular way that I like assignments to be submitted to Canvas. You may have used it before, you may not have. If you think you know how to submit assignments to Canvas, just still look at this anyways, just to make sure it is the way that you are used to. So it's a two-part process for me. The first part involves giving me access, sharing the document with my email address. When you are sharing the document, I do ask you to copy the link to the document to get the website URL, because in part 2 of the process, the website URL is actually what you submit. So some people try and circumvent my process and submit things using the Google Drive or Google Docs tab or whatever it's called. That is not my preferred method, so please follow my instructions. This method allows me to give feedback a lot more effectively and helps me check for online security. So if you could please follow this process to submit the test assignment that I'll show you in just a moment, then I would greatly appreciate that. The other thing that I wanted to mention was your grading spreadsheet. So I mentioned this in the syllabus, and I told you I'd tell you more about it later. Since I don't update PowerSchool on a daily or sometimes even weekly basis, I wanted a method to where you could get, really instantaneous feedback on your individual assignments, and you could know what skills were being measured, and you could see how you did on those and how you progressed throughout the semester and have a record of that. So you should have a grading spreadsheet. The title of the grading spreadsheet should be your last name and your first name, and you can get to it through one of three methods. You can just go through your email. You may have even seen the email that notified you that I shared that document with you. You can go through your Google Drive, or you can go through Google Sheets. So when you go into your Google Drive, you would want to click on the Shared With Me section so that you can find this document that was shared with you. And it will obviously have your last name and first name. It won't just say last name, first name. And it should look something like this, except with no numbers in it, because this is only the first day of class. So on the left side, I have all of the different skills that I mentioned to you in the grading section. And right now, obviously, everything's blank because we have no measurements for skills, but soon you'll start seeing numbers show up like this. So the assignments will be in this first row, and the assignment scores will go vertically. And then the skill scores will obviously be shown horizontally. So sometime this week, if you're an A-Day student, it'll be tomorrow, and if you're a B-Day student, it will be Friday. You are going to have a baseline assessment, and that just lets me know coming into the class where everybody's at. If I have a whole bunch of people who are really deficient on a certain skill, that helps me know, well, I need to do something about that. And just kind of gives me a better read for how things are starting out. So this particular imaginary student didn't score too hot on the baseline. You can see some 0.5s down there, so those scores are pretty rough. 2s and 2.5, so like they're all right, but really not great. A few 3s here and there, and yay, they can spell. That's about all they got going for them in the excellent category. Now, even with scores like this on the baseline, you should not panic because, as you may recall, the focus is on growth and change, and the next time that you receive a score for any of these things, hopefully it will be a higher score indicating your growth and your learning, and you will be able to improve these scores. So when you take the baseline, don't want you to panic, don't want you to freak out. These scores are not fixed. They absolutely can change. This is just your starting point. The only reason these scores matter is until we get other scores by which they can be improved. So that's that. Okay, what else did I need to say about that? Okay, I guess that's about it for now, and I'll talk more about that later once we actually get some numbers in there, and you can read more about that on this document. A lot of it is stuff I've already said verbally. The next thing that I have in here is the test assignment. So really all you're doing is just showing me you can follow instructions. Being able to follow instructions is good. It will be pretty crucial this semester since much of what I teach you will be when you are not present in my classroom. So this document that I just showed you, how to submit assignments to Canvas, use that as a guide and submit a document to this test assignment. It can be a blank document. It can be a fun assignment from last year. It doesn't really matter to me what it is, as long as you can show me that you know how to submit it. So the only thing that I'm going to check for when I check this test assignment is, can I see the document? That's literally it. Is it turned in? Can I see it? So if you submitted the website URL, then it will be turned in. And if you remembered to share it with me, then I will be able to see it. So that is goals for the test assignment, and I have given you until Friday to work that out, just in case you're awful confused and technology is not your thing. All right, now we get to the good stuff. AP exam. Dun dun dun. So they have already set the exam date for the AP exam. On Wednesday, May 12th at 8 a.m., you will be panicking. You will be freaking out because you will be about to take the exam. Maybe you'll be excited. Who knows? But I would probably be freaking out. So I mentioned that there were two sections, the multiple choice and the free response questions. The multiple choice, you have 1 hour to complete these 45 questions, and that is 45% of your score. It's all nonfiction texts. So if you enjoy fiction, then sorry, AP is a lot of nonfiction. And the questions are divided between reading questions, which is probably the type of question that you are used to. You know, the what happened in this passage, what was the author's purpose for this, can you read and understand a passage kind of questions. And then there will also be writing questions. Now, writing questions will involve writing revision, what's the word I'm looking for? Analysis. So they'll present to you a passage and they'll say this passage is a draft. And then they will start asking you questions about the best way to change things. So this is kind of the process that you really should go through with your own writing assignments. Of course, many people get done with their writing assignment and say, thank God it's done, and turn it in. But typically, you are encouraged, I'm sure, to look over your writing, think about, well, is that sentence in the right place? Do I need a transition sentence here? Should I say this sentence like this? Well, that's kind of wordy. Let me change it to this. It's those types of questions. And we'll get lots of practice with looking at those questions whenever we start our little progress checks for AP. So reading like a writer. The free response questions, 55% of your score, so definitely worth more than the multiple choice, and longer than the multiple choice too, 2 hours and 15 minutes. The 15 minutes is technically considered a reading period. They're technically giving you 2 hours for writing, roughly about 40 minutes per essay. And they will give you 3 questions, and you will have one of each type for the exam. So in the synthesis question, they will give you 6 to 7 short text, like articles and things like that, about a particular topic. All these texts will be organized around this one particular topic. And you will compose an argument that uses at least 3 of the sources that they gave you to support your argument, to support your thesis. So that one is a relatively new type of question, only been around since 2007, I think. But it does involve the ability to be able to use textual evidence effectively. The second type, a little bit more reading analysis based, a rhetorical analysis essay where you read a nonfiction text, typically shorter but maybe longer than each of the individual synthesis texts, and you will analyze in this text how the writer's language choices contribute to the meaning and purpose of the text. So this is the kind of reading analysis side of things. You're not so much making an argument as you are analyzing how this writer, whoever this writer is, made their argument effectively. And then the final one is the most open-ended, least amount of reading involved. They give you a topic. Sometimes the topic is inspired by a quote or something like that, and they'll say, what do you think? What's your position on this topic? And you create an argument, and you include information from your life or from your knowledge of the world or things that you have read, things that you've experienced, and you just pull in whatever you can to back up your argument, your position about whatever issue they give you. So that is the most open-ended out of the 3 questions for sure. Okay. The essays, we'll talk most about the essays. Oh, and anytime you get a little sad document face, just click on the title to the document. Some documents just won't load in Canvas. I think even my YouTube videos won't load in Canvas, actually, so you probably already know that. But anyways, these are the rubrics for the 3 essay types. You see lots and lots of pages, many, many words about the rubrics. Now, these rubrics are effective as of fall 2019. if you know anything about AP grading, AP English grading in particular, you'll know that until fall 2019, the essays were graded on a 9-point scale. That has all changed. So now, all essays, all 3 essays, are out of 6 points instead of 9 points. And instead of a holistic grading system, it's a little bit more rubric-based and points-based. So I'm going to go through the points designation for the synthesis essay, and then the other 2 are very similar. I mean, obviously they're different types of essays, so there's some different little details, but they're basically the same thing in terms of how they allocate points. So hopefully my explanation of the synthesis essay one will make the other ones clear. If not, feel free to ask me. So, row A, they have the essay scoring divided into 3 rows. Row A is all about the thesis. If that word is foreign to you, get familiar with it. We're going to talk about thesis statements this week, get right off the ground with that, and really establish what a good thesis looks like. Now, the thesis is worth 1 point, and it's all or nothing. You either get 0 points or you get 1 point. There's no half points anywhere in this essay grading. So if you get 0 points, you've probably really screwed things up, because the thesis is, that's the basic foundation of your argument. So if you present an idea that is not defensible, if you only restate the prompt rather than actually putting forth an argument of your own, if you summarize things rather than making a claim, or if you just don't respond to the prompt, those would be reasons that you would get 0 points. Typically, most of the essays at least get the thesis point. They at least establish a position, even if some of the other things fall apart along the way. So, you should respond to the prompt with a thesis that presents a defensible position. That is your first goal in any of these essays that you write. You have to have a position, and it must, of course, be defensible. So, some additional notes about the thesis. Some teachers may have encouraged you to limit the thesis to one sentence. It doesn't have to be just one sentence. I think it's nice when it can fit all in one sentence, but if you have a complicated position you're presenting, they're not going to be nitpicky about if it's, 2 or 3 sentences. The thesis may theoretically be anywhere within the response. Now, I have seen a few successful essays where the thesis was in the middle or the end of the essay. Not many, though. A lot of times, if you don't present the thesis early on, it can affect these other categories, these other rows. So the thesis can be anywhere within the response, but for the sake of your other points, it probably shouldn't be. So you can decide how you want to handle that, but I'll try to give you kind of an organization to help with the location of the thesis. Let's see, and I feel like the rest is fairly self-explanatory. Okay, moving on to row B. So once you get your thesis point, and hopefully you get your thesis point, because if you don't, it's real hard to get any of these other points. Row B is the most point-heavy category. It is all about evidence and commentary, and you can get up to 4 points for having effective evidence and commentary. Now, the flaw that I see some people come into junior year with is, though they may have been taught to use evidence, because usually for English 2, the writing questions on the English 2 exam will require teachers to encourage you to use evidence to support your answer. Commentary is a little trickier. So, ideally, you want to provide specific evidence, and for the synthesis essay, you're providing that evidence from the sources, the provided sources. For the rhetorical analysis essay, you'd be providing evidence from the passage, and for the argument essay, you'd be providing evidence from your own life experiences and, things that you can talk about. So anyways, you want to provide specific evidence. You don't want to leave it vague and general, very specific. The evidence should support your line of reasoning. So if you have evidence, and it doesn't adequately connect to your thesis statement, to whatever your argument is, then it does not count as evidence. And you want to have commentary that consistently, throughout the whole thing, explains how your evidence supports your line of reasoning. Okay, so if you are inconsistent with your commentary, if your commentary is not there, if your evidence is not specific or organized enough, then that's where you start to lose points on the evidence section. So it has to be really consistent throughout your entire essay. You really want to support your argument really thoroughly. So, under the additional notes things here, I'd just like to note that if your writing suffers from horrific grammatical and or mechanical errors, you will not be able to earn the 4th point in this row. Now, I will say that out of all the sample essays that I've read in preparing for this class, I have not seen a single essay that lost that 4th point because of grammatical or mechanical errors. I mean, it really has to be awful, like practically incomprehensible in order to lose that point. So, though we will focus in this class on proper grammar and punctuation and things like that, and those skills will serve you very well on the ACT, which does focus on proper grammar and punctuation rules, technically, you could have not great grammar and punctuation and still kill it on this essay. So if you're sitting there freaking out like, oh my god, I have to handwrite an essay, I won't know how to spell things and they'll take it off, they really probably won't. You're probably not going to lose a single smidgen of a point because of grammar or mechanical issues. And, obviously I'll be able to confirm that once I've seen some samples of your writing, but I can't anticipate you coming into this class with such horrible writing skills that you would not receive that point. So that's just me betting on you, believing in you. All right, the last point that you can possibly receive for your essay is about sophistication. Ooh. So thesis, yes, we can understand that, sure. Evidence and commentary, absolutely. Sophistication is where it gets a little bit more nebulous. What does it mean to write a sophisticated essay? It's one of those things where maybe we know it when we see it, but it's kind of hard to strategize for it, and it's kind of hard in some ways for me to teach it. But there are some things that you definitely can do to enhance your chances of getting that sophistication point, which honestly, if you're going to not get a point, it's probably going to be the sophistication point. It's a tough point to get for sure, but we're going to try anyways. So you're supposed to demonstrate sophistication of thought and or a complex understanding of the rhetorical situation. So there's a few ways that you can demonstrate this sophistication. So in the synthesis essay, you have multiple sources. If you can identify complexities, tensions, ways that they contradict each other, ways that they're flawed, if you can provide counter arguments, that really shows next level analysis. Instead of just parroting and paraphrasing what the sources say, the ability to critique a source, to say, well, this source comments on this, but this other source points out that this source is flawed because, to give that level of argument and analysis, that's more sophisticated than just here's the stuff that the article said. Okay. That kind of goes with number 2 a little bit as well, the limitations of an argument. And you can situate it in a broader context. Now, broader context is difficult because obviously we don't know what these topics are going to be about before the day of the exam. Hopefully, you get topics that maybe you know a little something about, and you're able to talk about the historical context of that issue or, something like that. And that would be a broader context, understanding more than just what is presented to you and having some knowledge and being able to apply that knowledge to your essay. That is sophisticated and shows, your level of experience going into this. You can also establish sophistication through rhetorical choices. So the particular argumentative strategies that you use in your essay, the kinds of things that you would analyze in a rhetorical essay, those particular argumentative strategies, if you're using very sophisticated and advanced ones, that definitely plays to your strength. And that can come down to word choice, that can come down to sentence structure, effective use of repetition or rhetorical questions. Those sorts of things can take your essay to the next level. And then finally, your style could just be consistently vivid and persuasive. So if it's just kind of all around awesome, every word you put in there is just stellar, then they can say, well, there wasn't a specific thing, but it's really, really nice essay, very, very eloquent, very graceful. So that could help you out in the sophistication point area. Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, the other essay analysis things are here. Same deal, though. You get a point for the thesis. You get up to 4 points for evidence and commentary, and you get a point for sophistication. So some of the little bullet points and things are different, but it's the same general rubric for all 3 types of essays. So I will let you peruse that at your leisure. And as we get to each essay type throughout the semester, we'll talk about each particular rubric in a lot more detail. Okay. The last thing that I have for you, if that guide was confusing or perplexing in some way, this one just breaks it down a little bit more, I think. A fellow AP teacher had this to kind of help explain the changes in the essays. So used to be 1 through 9, now it's up to 6 points. So just some kind of do's and don'ts for each section, so that you can understand a little bit more. If the previous page didn't make sense, this presents it in a different way. So I think, yep, that is all that I have for day 1. So any time that we have left, I will take questions and give students time to complete student information form and turn in a little test assignment. And I can start checking those to make sure that people have submitted them properly. But yeah, Tuesday, A-Day students will take the baseline assessment. So be ready to turn your thinking caps on that day. And then Wednesday's remote lesson will focus on grammar, which, as I mentioned, is not a crucial skill for the AP exam. But hey, it's good to review the things, and some of this information definitely will apply for the ACT writing section. So anyways, some good stuff to get into for later on in the week. So that is all for today's lesson.